Welcome to week 8 of our video discussion boards and our last one. So for this week, we were tasked with discussing George M. Marsden's The Outrageous Idea of Christian Scholarship. It was an interesting read. I found my two most fascinating chapters were probably the first and the last, just because of some of the background source material I found throughout. And so I found two articles relating to chapter 1, which was why Christian perspectives are not welcomed. And that had, I found Roy Battenhouse's Anti-Religion in Academia. And then I found the Modernism, Christianity, and Business Ethics and Worldview Perspective. And so I thought those were interesting to pick into because one of them gives more of a, non-secular kind of look at things and just an understanding of like why these things have occurred, because Marsden also does kind of delve into the background, like the historical background of why things are the way they are in terms of the relationship with Christianity and academia. And then with Anti-Religion in Academia, that was more focused on just the struggles, I think, that Christians seem to be experiencing when trying to share their religious ideologies with a general ed kind of group. So that was interesting. And then with chapter 6, which was this week's chapter that we read, Building Academic Communities, I found Daniel Day Williams' Christian Freedom and Academic Freedom to be quite enjoyable and something that was interesting to like kind of go into, because I feel like they paralleled one another quite a bit. With Christian freedom and academic freedom, it kind of talks about like how you can sort of interweave the two things together, and that was really interesting. And of course, with Marsden's chapter, Cultivating Spiritual Virtues and Beyond the Enlightenment, were both kind of following those similar themes. Overall, the entire book was a very interesting read. It's divided into 6 parts, and so I've gone over 2 of them a little more in depth, but you've got the argument for silence, Christian scholarship and the rules of the academic game, what difference could it make, and then the positive contributions of theological context, all also in that book, which were all very unique and I felt informative, especially as a teacher myself. I found the 3rd chapter, Christian scholarship and the rules of academic game, to be specifically kind of interesting, just because it gave me good ideas on how I could, I don't want to push my theology on my students, especially those that are young, and honestly most of my students already are Christian, but it's an interesting way to kind of talk and relate things to the Christian perspective without specifically going really in depth and possibly pushing against, a child's already established religion, or kind of like making trouble and making waves where there don't need to be. It's a more gentle approach, I feel like, and that was a really interesting read to kind of go through and learn about. And of course, the background history of why it is the way it is also interesting to me, just as a historian in general. So overall, a great read. I definitely am keeping this in my back pocket for later research and, more in-depth research. I feel like I kind of read through it very quickly. I like to take my time with these kind of texts. But overall, very interesting. Have a good day.